Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't found a seat yet, if you've been making your way, some of the ambassadors in the yellow shirts can help you find empty spaces if anyone's having trouble finding a seat. We have a wonderful crowd tonight here tonight. My name is Mary Lackey, and I'm the Director of Alumni here at Arkansas Tech University. To our alumni, welcome back home to campus. And to our other special guests, welcome to campus, and we hope that you too will feel at home here. I'd like to offer a special thanks to Dr. Timothy Smith, the Assistant Professor of Music here at Tech. He was the one, I believe he's gone already, but he was the one that was playing the piano for us this evening, and he's very talented and a wonderful musician. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Master of Ceremonies for this evening's festivities. He graduated from Tech in 1966 with a bachelor's degree in Health and Physical Education. He currently serves on our Board of Trustees, and he was inducted into the Hall of Distinction as a distinguished alumnus in 1997. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Phil Phillips.
Thank you, Mary. What a privilege it is for me to be here tonight. Let me get our ordeal started tonight with the introduction of Mr. Keith Klutz. Mr. Klutz, he's going to lead us in our invocation. Thank you.
Good evening. Let's bow together, please. Almighty Father, creator of heaven and earth, giver of all good gifts, tonight we gather in this place to acknowledge your gifts to us, particularly four men, Jim Harwood, Don Sevier, Joe Foley, and Jim Smith. Gifts to us from you. We pray that tonight will be a special time for them and their families, and that this will be a single event in their lives that will impact their families for generations. That 100 years from now, their descendants can look back with pride and say that their patriarch was a member of the Arkansas Tech University Hall of Distinction. We thank you for the good gift of Arkansas Tech and the impact this institution has had and still has on our lives. And Lord, we thank you for the good gift of Dr. Bob Brown, a wise and wonderful leader whom you've placed here to guide us. We thank you for these men, for Dr. Brown, and for Arkansas Tech, and ask you to continue to bless our lives with good gifts like these. And now bless our meal and fellowship together as we honor these great men this evening. In the powerful name of Jesus, your greatest gift of all. Amen.
At this time, we'll be served. Let's enjoy our meal, and we'll be back together in a few moments.
I've been looking all over the room for you, and here you're sitting right across the aisle from me. Where's your brother? I'm doing fine. How are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, the administration, the faculty, the student body at Arkansas Tech University, welcome to the most dynamic and the fastest growing public university in Arkansas. This evening, it's my privilege to recognize a number of special guests. First of all, let me introduce to you the First Lady of Arkansas Tech and its biggest supporter, my wife, Jill. Jill, stand so that you can be recognized. We're privileged this evening to have all the members of our Board of Trustees with us. Let me introduce those members of the Board of Trustees, and I'll ask each to stand. And ladies and gentlemen, please hold your applause until all have been introduced. First of all, the Chairman of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Sean McDougall of Greenwood, and Mrs. McDougall. Dr. McDougall. Mr. Phil Phillips, Jr. of Springdale. Mr. Jim Harwood and Mrs. Harwood of Fort Smith, and you're going to hear about Mr. Harwood just presently. Mrs. Harriet Thone of Russellville, and her husband, Mr. Rick Thone, who is a former member of the Board of Trustees, and Mr. Dean Wilburn of Harrison and Mrs. Wilburn. Let's recognize our board. We're also privileged to have with us a number of former board members. And again, please hold your applause until all have been introduced. Mr. Dale Brown of Russellville and Mrs. Brown. Mr. Troy Burris of Russellville and Mrs. Burris. Mr. Johnny Morgan of Russellville and Mrs. Morgan. The Honorable Mary Ann Salmon, member of the House of Representatives of the 83rd General Assembly of North Little Rock and former board member. Dr. Stan Teeter and Mrs. Teeter of Russellville. Mr. John Teal of Fort Smith. And again, Mr. Rick Thone of Russellville. Let us recognize our former board. It's my privilege this evening to introduce to you also the 10th president of Arkansas Tech University, Dr. Kenneth Kirsch. Ken, stand so that we may recognize you. Some people who are very close to our university and to whom we owe a deep debt of gratitude, the Honorable Olin Cook and Mrs. Cook. Dr. Cook, where are you? Former member of the Arkansas House of Representatives, the Honorable Lloyd Reed George. Lord Reed, where are you? Let us stand so that we can recognize you. The Honorable Stan Russ and Mrs. Russ, former member of the Arkansas State Senate. Senator, welcome home. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your presence. Thank you for helping us to introduce and honor our special guest, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, President Brown. What a wonderful meal. There's a group of guys in the audience that I had the pleasure to go to school with here at Arkansas Tech. And I don't remember the food being quite this good. But it must have been pretty good because it stuck with us pretty good. So those Tech steaks really will stay with you a lifetime, believe me. It's great to be back home at Arkansas Tech, and it's great to be among a group of distinguished people such as yourselves. And we're all here tonight to honor 4 prestigious gentlemen and their families for the things that they've done. And I'm just very glad to get to be here and do that. So thank you for the privilege, Mary. At this time, it is my privilege to announce and introduce to you some past honorees of this prestigious award. And first, we have with us tonight Vicki Habata, the widow of John Tucker. Would you please stand, Vicki? And let's do this. Let's just. I've already messed up, Mary. I'm sorry. Let's stay standing if we can, if that's all right, and let's hold our applause. All right, here we go. Garland Godfrey. Garland. John W. Nutt. Ronald. Thanks, John. Ronald Bailey. Janice Falls. Thank you, Janice. Dr. Stanley Teeter. Coach Wilson Matthews. Robert Hayes Williams. The widow of Melvern Watson, Mrs. Sarah Drew. Margaret Taggart. Hartzell Bartlett. Hartzell. C. Lemoyne Smith. William Harmon. Tommy Hillman. Van A. Moores. Durr Dobson. Gerald Johnston. That's the guy that has the beautiful granddaughters. Troy Burris. Dr. Kenneth Kirsch. The widow of Dr. Jim Ed McGee, Carolyn. Coach Don Dempsey. Jack Jones. Dr. Thomas W. Sullivan. Coach Clyde Horton. William Bud Harper. Ray Eugene Gene Harwood. Now we have members also with us of the Distinguished Service Award recipients. Mrs. Mary B., excuse me, Jerry, I'm sorry. Mr. James B. Jerry Burns, excuse me, Jerry. Mr. Gerald Edgar. Mr. William B. Limley, excuse me, Bill, Mr. William Bill Limley. And the Honorable Lloyd R. George. Let's show our appreciation to these fine folks. It's also my privilege tonight to introduce to you the presenters of our honorees. First, I'd like to again call Mr. Keith Klutz to come up. Keith, you want to join me up here on the stage? Keith is a 1978 Arkansas Tech graduate. He is the president-elect of the Arkansas Tech University Alumni Association. Keith is the minister of music at Garland Avenue Baptist Church in Fort Smith, and he's asked all the presenters to kind of hurry it up tonight because he has to work tomorrow. Right? Second, Keith will be presenting the awards to our recipients. Dr. Robert C. Brown. Dr. Brown is the 11th president of Arkansas Tech University, and he'll be introducing Coach Joe Foley. Dr. Brown's been in service to Tech since 1993. Under his visionary leadership, Tech has experienced unprecedented growth in its academic programs, its private financial support, and expansion, renovation, and the beautification to the physical plant. And I'd like to vary a little bit from the written script and say a couple of words from the heart about Dr. Brown. I've been privileged to work with him rather closely for the past couple of years, and it is lonely at the top sometimes. We all know that. And I can assure you that what I have observed in Dr. Brown's administering his duties here at Tech is that he really has a heart for Arkansas Tech. The decisions he makes, whether we like them or don't like them, in his mind is for the best of Arkansas Tech. And really appreciate you, Dr. Brown. Thank you. Mr. Gene Harwood is introducing his brother, Jim. You want to come up, Jim? I've enjoyed listening to Jim tell stories about Gene. We forgot to bolt that in tonight. We'll get that taken care of. Sorry about that, Gene. Gene is a 1950 graduate of Arkansas Tech. He's a member of the Hall of Distinction and is a past president of the Arkansas Tech University Alumni Association. We look forward to hearing from Gene. Also joining us tonight is Mr. Jerry Burns. Want to come up, Jerry? Jerry's introducing Coach Don Sevier. And I don't know. Sir? Okay. Yes, he's. I'm sorry, Jerry is a longtime friend of all. That's all right, just do what you want to do, Jerry. That's right. Jerry's a longtime friend of mine personally, and also of Arkansas Tech. He serves as, I'll get you one here in just a minute. He serves on the foundation board and he's a former Fund Drive chairman, and he's past recipient of the Distinguished Service Award. I've known Jerry since 1962, and he's a great friend of Arkansas Tech, believe me. Mr. Bill Limley, and there's no chairs, so I'm going to get one, Bill. So just hold on a minute. Bill's a longtime friend of Arkansas Tech and retired faculty member. Hi, Bill. Bill's a longtime friend of Arkansas Tech and retired faculty member here at Tech. He's introducing one of his former students tonight, Jim Smith, as he receives the first ever Outstanding Young Alumnus Award. Bill's a former Distinguished Service Award winner honoree, a member of the School of Business Advisory Board, a member of the Foundation Board, and a friend and mentor to many Arkansas Tech students that he has guided throughout the years here at Tech. Recently, an endowed chair in his name was established in the Tech School of Business. So these are our presenters tonight. At this point, I would like to ask Dr. Brown to come up and present Coach Foley.
Thank you again, Mr. Phillips, and thanks for the kind word, and thanks to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Foley is the winningest active Division II NCAA basketball coach in America, with an .850 winning percentage in 14 seasons. His passion for the game of basketball is carried over to Foley's coaching methods, and the numbers speak for themselves as to how successful this 45-year-old has been since taking over the Golden Suns program in 1987. In 14 seasons at Tech, Foley is 402-71. He has a 170-8 record in home games, 8 losses in 14 years at home, and a 189-23 in all conference games. He has brought 2 national championships, 1992 and 1993, 1 national runner-up, 1999, 12 national tournament appearances, and 11 conference championships to Arkansas Tech, all while running a program that has not only graduated its players, but consistently places them on conference academic honor rolls. Foley has been honored numerous times throughout his tenure at Tech. Arkansas Intercollegiate Conference Coach of the Year 7 times. NAIA District or Region Coach of the Year 6 times. NAIA National Coach of the Year twice. And Gulf South Conference Coach of the Year twice. He was selected as United States Olympic Festival Coach in 1994. Foley began his coaching career in Oxford. That's Oxford, Arkansas. Before moving to Marlton 2 years later as an assistant boys coach. After 3 seasons, he left to become an assistant within the Tech program to men's basketball coach Jim Weider. Foley was named the head women's coach in 1987, and under his leadership, the Golden Suns have enjoyed nothing less than stellar records. 11 conference championships, 11 national tournament appearances, 2 national championships, 1 national runner-up, 6 Final Four appearances, 8 Elite Eight appearances, 10 Sweet 16 appearances, and 2 NCAA South Region championships. The main ingredient of the Golden Suns' success has always been pressure defense. And Foley's reputation as a defensive guru has spread from coast to coast. Now, there's also been a rumor that they were pretty well conditioned from time to time. Under his careful attention, the Suns are consistently ranked among the national leaders in practically every statistical category related to the defensive side. If ever a tribute was paid to Foley and his team, it came from former Southwest Oklahoma coach John Lofton, who directed the Lady Bulldogs to 5 national championships. After losing to the Golden Suns 64-44 in the semifinals of the 1992 national tournament, Lofton said, and I quote, "I knew about halftime it was going to be a long night. I turned to my assistant and I said I was going to start clapping for Arkansas Tech here in a minute. It wasn't because I was disappointed in my girls," said Lofton. "It was because it was just an enjoyable experience to watch such an outstanding team. It was the best team I ever coached against in a national tournament." And Joe, I want you to know that it's an extraordinary thing for the sitting president of the university to read your citation. And I'm honored to do this for you tonight because I know that in the future, when the Tech family, and we are a Tech family, when the Tech family has conversations about athletics and the name Tucker and Heinzman are mentioned, that in the same breath, the name of Foley is going to be spoken as well. Coach, congratulations.
I just want to say it's a great honor and thank Dr. Brown for all that he's done for me and the introduction. And naturally, to get into a situation like I've got into, it's been a blessing. You know, it's hard for me to receive an individual award because in coaching, you're always thinking as a team. And, you know, you always have a lot of different teams. And, you know, I've played on a lot of different teams as far as those things that helped me receive this award. And the first thing is that I have to thank that Coach Weider, Miss Weider's here tonight. You know, he's the one that taught me that coaching was more about people than X's and O's. You know, I was watching Duke play Maryland, and they were down by 20. And when Coach K called the timeout, you know, he said the next day, he said, "Guys, we're not going to run any more plays." He says, "It's time to show our heart." And that to me is what coaching is all about, is to get people to believe with their heart what you're trying to get accomplished. And you've seen what Coach K and Duke has done many years, and that's the way Coach Weider was. We hardly ever talked X's and O's. It was more about how do you handle people, how do you get people to do what you feel is proper. And to be successful as a team, you know, you got to get people to care about each other. That's the first thing we do in coaching and with our teams is begin trust. If you can't trust your teammates, if you can't depend on them, if you don't care about them, it's not going to matter what you try to do as a coach or play, what plays you run. If you don't have those ingredients, you're not going to be successful. And I've been around a lot of people, and you know, I'm just going to thank a few people tonight, and Coach Weider was one of them because he's the one that got me started in the right direction. The second family or second team that I've been on is administration. You know, thank goodness that Coach Sevier had the foresight to hire such a great young coach, you know. Because at that time, because what a lot of people really forgot, I didn't have a job at that time. I was very fortunate, and I really appreciate President Kirsten and Coach Sevier for taking a chance and giving me that. And, you know, to me, there's not a greater person that bleeds green and gold than Coach Sevier, because I can tell you, women's basketball for a period of time, of course, everybody knows how it was originated and getting going along, and now, you know, it's sellout crowds. But it wasn't that way when I first started. Women's basketball was just on the upcline, and Coach Sevier, you know, was glad that we had a good program. But I tell you what, when we were in the national tournament in 1991, he was the first one down the court, and I guarantee you I've never seen such big tears in a person's eyes when we won the national championship. And when he shook my hand, I knew right then that I had a great follower and a great person to be along with. So I appreciate you, Coach Sevier, a lot. The other athletic directors that I've had, of course, it's, you know, I had 3 or 4. I've been here probably too long, so I'm fortunate, you know, that it's happened. But I've had some great ones. But again, Coach Cloud is our newest one. And I knew again that basketball had changed a little bit too, because when we went to a regional tournament or a conference tournament, Coach Cloud was the first one to check into a motel and said, "We're going to be here for a week." So I appreciate that, Coach Cloud, because usually it's always, you know, we kind of got a little spoiled, and it's when we go to a tournament, "I'll see you in the finals." But, you know, it's great to have that kind of support from the administration. And then, of course, it all goes to your president, too. The president's wife graduated from Louisiana Tech. Everybody knows about their great tradition in basketball. And, Dr. Brown has been great to me, but his wife's also been great to our program, too. She loves the game, and she comes up after every game and gives the kids a lot of hugs. And I know we've got that kind of support. And to look up in the stands and to see the vice president and the faculty, the vice presidents that we have at the games and the faculty that we have, it's just a great honor to be coaching at a university where people appreciate hard work and what our young people are trying to get accomplished, because they know it does mean something to them. Another family that you have to go to is your coaches. And I've got some assistant coaches that have been with me that are now head coaches, and they're some of the most outstanding young coaches, and they helped me get through some real trying times. And, Ricky Smith was with the first national championship, and Ricky has really progressed a lot, because when we were playing for that national championship, Stephanie Strack, was the MVP. She's sitting back there, too. She was the MVP. And Rick said, Coach, we were playing along, and all of a sudden, she wasn't playing real well, but as y'all know, Stephanie could shoot a basketball like nobody else could. Rick said, take her out, Coach. She's not playing worth a crap. I said, what, Rick? I said, who are we going to put in? This was one of those teams where we only had 6 players. I said, we're going to take out our best player. And now he's won 3 state championships at Fort Smith Northside, so he's done a great job. Shannon Burks is here. He drove from Texas to come here to see me. Shannon was with me when there really was an assistant coach. He come down and volunteered, stayed with me for 7 years, and did a tremendous job, helped me win our 2nd national championships, was with me when we won national runner-up in the NCAA, and we shared a lot of great times. And again, that's what being a family is, just being able to share, because you can accomplish so much more when you share with each other. And me and Shannon went through some great times. And now I got Karen Pinions, which is one of those players on the point guard on the national championship team, as my assistant. And, her things that she's doing for me now, I can't tell you how much that I appreciate what she's done as a player and what she's doing for our program. So, I've had some great people, and you always have to have great people to help you accomplish great things. And then, of course, my family. If it hadn't been for my family and the upbringing that my dad and mom gave me when I was growing up, I never would have learned that hard work. He said, son, when I was in the 8th grade, he said, it's time to go get a lawnmower. I said, what are you talking about? He said, we're going to go down and you're going to pick out what lawnmower you want. I thought, well, that's pretty cool, So we go down there and he says, all right, you pick it out, and then you walk up there and tell that person that you're going to put that on account and you're going to pay it off as you mow yard. And that's what I did for 2 or 3 summers. So I learned real quick that, hard work wasn't going to hurt anybody, and it would help you become successful, because he mentioned how hard we do work. Well, that's where it all started, was him up taking me around. And I won't tell him that you did it in your state police car, but he dropped me off at the yards and said, I'll pick you up here in an hour, hurry up and get it done. And that's the way we started. So hopefully you're dismissed long enough from the state police and retired that they won't come back and get it. But I do all that to my folks. And then my family, when you're in sports, whether you're playing, you see great athletes playing, and they're always telling you about their family as, they're always away from home. Well, that's how it is as a coach. She's had to raise 2, I think, great kids. She's done a great job, and I owe her a lot. And, that's the way it is, because with a basketball team or any other team, you're having to raise a family of your own. I've got 15 other young people that I have to worry about being out on the streets, being out drinking or something like that, which fortunately at Tech we don't have that much problem, but they are young people. And so she had to take on the responsibility not only of those 2, but the 15 or 16 that I usually brought home, that we feed and everything else. So she's done a great job. My kids, I think, have learned that. I can see it in their eyes when they come to games. If we've been beat, CJ travels with us now quite a bit, especially when we're going to the Bahamas or someplace like that. But, they probably worry more about me than anybody else, and I can see it in their eyes. And just to have that feeling that your kids care that much about you and what you're doing is a great, great honor, and that's the way I feel, and it's great that they've learned that, and because that's what having a team is. It's about heart and commitment and caring and trusting. And, for me to receive this award is just, a service award for something that I do like that is just unbelievable, because, that's all I'm trying to do is get these young people, everybody says, sports and basketball is maybe too overpaid, too overdrawn, too much watched and everything else. But this is what we're trying to teach those young people. The X's and O's and playing is not very much of it. It's learning how to cooperate, how to believe in people, and how to get the most out of life. And I'll just say this, I received this from a player a couple of years ago, and just to let you know how I feel about it. is that I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time, and I wanted to talk to you in person, but I knew I couldn't hold up. You'll never know how much I appreciate you and the things you've done for me and how you've led me through life. You made me realize the strengths and weaknesses from day to day and how to improve upon those characteristics. I consider knowing you and being associated as a very high honor. When I get in a tough situation that I'm unsure of what I need to do, I just think of some of the stories that I've heard from you, and it always helps me through it. Well, that's the way I feel about coaching. If I'm getting an award for helping people, I'll be doing this for a long time because that really means a lot to me, so I appreciate it.
Good evening, fellow students, fellow alumni, friends of Arkansas Tech. I am certainly grateful to have the opportunity to introduce a member of our family as he is inducted into the Arkansas Tech University Hall of Distinction. And I was just thinking today, sitting here, that my knowing about Tech and my affection and love for Tech started back in the early 40s when our high school coach in Fort Smith would stop our bus ride as we went to Little Rock or North Little Rock, Pine Bluff, and towns for athletic events, that we would stop and walk around the Tech campus, walk around out on the practice field, and that's when we first met Coach Tucker. That was just natural for me to end up down at Arkansas Tech. But I'm really appreciative of this opportunity. And I want to acknowledge the many thoughts and ideas and suggestions that I've gotten through the mail, by telephone, and personal contact from many of Jimmy's friends. I've stacked all that up, and in Reader's Digest condensed form, it'd take me about 2 hours to tell you about that, but Mike McGibbon and Billy Higgins, two of the cohorts, are here. And if you want to know about Jimmy, you need to single them out because they can tell you all those stories. I want to introduce Jimmy by telling you 2 or 3 short stories. In the early 40s, now it's hard to imagine at Arkansas Tech where you couldn't find a radio. But it was hard to find a radio or somebody who had a radio in their room. And a lot of us were already radio fans, but there were a lot of good radio programs in those days if you could find a radio. My favorite program was a program called the Hallmark Hall of Fame. I don't know whether any of you remember that or not. The main thing about it, it was a history program about places, people, about events of the United States that was very popular. And none of us had any money to buy any cards, but we knew a lot about Hallmark Hall of Fame from listening to that radio program. And do you remember the motto they had, the sales pitch? When you care enough to send the very best. And I decided that if I was ever able to buy a card to send to somebody, I was going to buy a Hallmark card. But the main thing was the things that I learned from listening to that radio program. I just like yesterday, I remember that one night the program was about Shreveport, Louisiana. And a man named John Shreve, who started up around Osceola and developed a snag boat. So John Shreve was responsible for developing a snag boat that cleared the Red River and made it possible for the town of Shreveport. And I always thought that was interesting. Plus, they had a lot of stories that gave you a good round. So I learned a lesson from that because that was always on my mind somewhere along the way. It stuck with me that the Hallmark Hall of Fame and the Hallmark cards, that when you cared enough to send the very best. Then as I got out in the work world, I realized that when you care enough to send the very best, you don't send a card. You don't send even a Hallmark card, you send yourself. And I think Jimmy Harwood learned that, maybe not by listening to a radio program like that, but when you really care enough to send your very best, your shadow shows up and you show up on the scene. And I think if you read Jimmy's resume and the way he's conducted his life, Jimmy is one of these people that showed up for every time he had a job. Now, that's hard to do your best and always send your best. And you have to work at it. And I was reminded several times in my life when I didn't. One short story I'll tell you is I had a friend that we worked together in Fort Smith a long time. We're in the service together. Retired, moved to Muldrow, Oklahoma, and died. I was notified of his death, and Al and I were in the Fort Smith area, and I thought, well, I'm already here. I'll go over and talk to the widow, pay my respects to the family, and I won't have to come back for a funeral later on in the week. I don't know whether you've ever slipped and had a thought like that, but I did. So I got in my car and went over to Muldrow, Oklahoma, found the house, and guess what? The widow was sitting with her family in the living room. As I walked in, she said, "Harwood, I'm glad to see you. I've been waiting for you to come and help me go to Fort Smith and plan my husband's funeral." So, you know, sometimes we forget to send our best. We don't do anything. So Jimmy somehow learned that trait. He learned to show up, make an honest effort, and a personal job out of it, and everything that Jimmy has been involved in. Now I know, because I followed him closely, Jimmy learned as a youth, as we did where we lived, in Trustee School and junior high and Fort Smith High School and Arkansas Tech, that you very seldom get in trouble in church or Sunday school. You very seldom get in trouble with a teacher in a classroom. You very seldom get in trouble with a coach on the practice field or out on the football field where they're also officials. So Jimmy learned to make good decisions about his friends, who he chose as friends, and what he did with his time. So Jimmy has basically been living following a clean and wholesome life. And then after Jimmy learned the art of showing up. Now, a lot of people I found in my work in vocational rehabilitation didn't know how to show up for work. And every coach that I ever had, I remember they'd say, "Harwood, if you aren't early, you're already late." And Jimmy learned that. He's a punctual person. So Jimmy learned those traits, and I'm sure he learned them in his road down the road of life, not from a radio program, but by the people he dealt with, his coaches, his teachers, and his friends. But the most important thing that Jimmy learned is what to do when he cared enough to send the very best. And he didn't go through that stage like I did. Well, I'll send a Hallmark card. Jimmy learned that if he cared enough to send the best, he would send himself. It's my honor to introduce Jimmy Hall.
Well, you can always be branded by your age and your association when you're called Jimmy. One of the first persons I saw this evening was Wilson and Betty Sue Kell, that were friends and teammates of Jean's, and she said she had not seen me since I was a little boy, that I had grown up, and I had to tell her I was going to be 62 years old next week, so there's a reason for that. But I'm deeply honored and thrilled to receive this award from the Arkansas Tech Alumni Association. No one could be more happily surprised nor privileged to be here tonight than I am. I have the greatest admiration for the three other men that are being honored tonight. Coach Don Sevier, as you probably already know, is truly a legend in the glorious athletic history of Arkansas Tech, and his contributions are equaled by few, if any people, any athlete or of any coach, past or present. You just heard the many accomplishments of Coach Joe Foley, and not just on this campus, but as Dr. Brown stated, on any college campus in America. He's really a tremendous coach. And young Jim Smith, who is the age of my youngest daughter, what a tremendous track record that he's already built and established, and a tremendous reputation since his graduation just 10 short years ago. I've been very, very fortunate and blessed in my life. I had an almost ideal childhood and growing up experience that started with wonderful and loving parents. Although our parents had very limited education, they wanted their children to have a better way of life and knew that education was the way to get us off the farm and to keep us from going to work in the furniture factories as our father did. I'm so proud of my older brothers who provided many good examples for me, but particularly for showing me the way to Arkansas Tech. My family has a long relationship with Tech that began with Gene and Lloyd attending here on football scholarships. I think the first car that I ever saw was a 1946 maroon Ford driven up to our house by Billy Huey, when he came to visit us. Several teammates of my brothers later became coaches and teachers both in Fort Smith and here at Tech. Before he was my football and track coach in junior high, I learned the ham bone from the man that brought it up here from Alabama to Arkansas Tech. And at the time, I'm not sure it still holds, but at the time, I'm sure I was the only grade school person outside of Birmingham, Alabama, that wasn't a shoe shine boy that could do the ham bone. That's my only act of entertainment. If I had time, I would show you. So Coach Harton, I thank you for encouraging me at a very critical time in my life in junior high. And our 9th grade team, which he coached 2 of those sports, we were state champions in football, basketball, and track. Don Dempsey was a teammate of Lloyd's and coached the baseball team my junior and senior year here at Tech. And Coach, thank you for the influence on my life. There are so many fond memories of my years of association with Tech that I could not begin to relate them to you. The bitter rival of the Grizzlies was Van Buren, much like the bitter rival of Tech is UCA. But after I came to Tech, I noticed Linda Gant from Van Buren in the dining hall as she and her other Van Buren friends would eat there. We started dating my junior year and dated all that next year, and then after we're married in October of 1961 after I graduated and saved $600 before I went in the Army. But we're the proud parents of Kyle and Kristen, and our children could not be here tonight, but it's for good reasons. Kyle has just moved to Colorado Springs to go to work with Intel, and Kristen has, to update the little biographical sketch, has given birth to our 3rd grandchild, a little boy named Judson Harwood Arrington, down in Texas, so neither of them could travel. But Linda, would you please stand? Let us, I thank you for what you did to me. She's a nice looking grandmother, isn't she? 2 of my brothers are here tonight. Our oldest brother is now deceased, but I've always looked up to these 2 guys. And it was always very special to have 2 bona fide football stars living in the same house with you. We had several aunts that lived in our neighborhood. One next door. Matter of fact, it was a pretty small house, and our sister just stayed over there all the time. She picked up all the bills and helped raise our sister. But she asked me, after Gene and Lloyd were both gone, if I was sorry and if I missed them since they'd gone off to college. And I told her I was glad they were gone. I got a bed by myself for the first time, and I tasted the white meat of the chicken for the first time. So instead of being the youngest of 5, I was like an only child, and it was a great feeling, I tell you. Gene was properly inducted into the Hall of Distinction 2 years ago, and is a proud member of Tech's first 4-year graduating class in 1949. So thanks, Gene, for presenting me tonight, and his dear wife, Isla, who is much like a sister to me, is here with us tonight. And my brother Lloyd is retired from the Air National Guard, and he's here with his son, Barry. I remember as we would come down here to see the games that my dad would sometimes talk to the coaches, Rabbit Burnett for one. And the coaches, I heard several times tell my dad that Lloyd was really a better athlete and a better football player than Gene, that he just wasn't as mean as Gene. And Lloyd's response that he was just as mean, but he wasn't as dirty as Gene. And several times, I think he had been down here 2 years before my parents and I ever got to see Gene complete a football game. He was usually thrown out somewhere along the line. But Lloyd chose to go into the Air Force and did not complete his football career. But with us tonight also is our special nephew, Jim Schoolcraft, and his wife, Joanna, that lives down in Maumelle. Jim lived in our home for several years, and so we're really proud of him. And his family includes 3 very good-looking boys that we love very much. Since 1965, it has been my good fortune to be employed by City National Bank, which became Bancorp South in September of last year, and I've worked with many wonderful people there for these 36 years. And they're led here tonight by my good friend and mentor, Sonny Henson, who rode down here with Wilson Matthews. Now, Mike McGibbon and I became good friends down here, and we used to have long arguments over who was the meanest of the high school coaches, Steve White or Wilson Matthews. I think Wilson finally won out on that.
All the way. All the way.
But thank you all for coming down here and being with me tonight. Several friends and classmates are here with us tonight, and 2 of whom I've had a long-standing relationship from the 1st grade through Arkansas Tech, which is a long relationship. Billy Higgins and Roger Lee. And if Coach Bynum were able to be here tonight, Coach Dempsey, if you could reach him, he would love to get his hands on Billy Higgins, because he tried for a long time and couldn't quite catch him. And Mike McGibbon, that we formed a special friendship hitchhiking all over the state of Arkansas to watch Johnny Cash shows. We got to the point where we thought that Luther, his guitar player that set the music for the evening, would consult us before he made out that program. And then Van Lee, Roger's brother, and his wife Judy, who's Linda's lifelong friend, so thank you for being here. Sometimes, but not very frequently in life, common goals bring people together because of strong feelings and some passion about an institution or a common cause. As a result of those strong feelings, a special bond is formed. And a special bond is how I describe my long association with Arkansas Tech. and with each of you here tonight, because we share that as a family. It has been a wonderful experience to me to be able to serve on various committees and boards here at Tech since my graduation, and I've learned to greatly admire the passion and the desire for excellence that Dr. Brown has displayed in his capacity as president of the university. And I've long treasured the friendships with the faculty, beginning with the late Dale Corley, who was a best friend as well as a teacher, and Bill Limley and others. I'm so thankful for the opportunities of life and the many lasting friendships that have been provided me by Arkansas Tech. The true value of this institution is really not the beautiful buildings that have continued to spring up here through the years. It is the opportunities that it presents to its students. It allowed a young boy to fulfill a lifelong dream of coming here to get an education, to form some lasting friendships with teammates, fellow students, and the faculty, and have the opportunity to improve his life and meet his life partner and the mother of his children. When I visualize the pictures displaying the inductees into the Hall of Distinction and see the people that I'm with, I'm very humbled and very, very honored to be there with them. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You're hugging him, Gene. I'd be trying to defend myself the way names he's called you here tonight. Okay. Those of us who are the introducers probably feel that we are the ones really being honored. And you can see from the lineup here that those are being honored is the reason that I make that statement. And that's the way I felt when Don asked me if I would introduce him. I guess some of you, or most of you, know that Don had heart surgery back in February. And some of them were talking at Hardy's, that's his headquarters. And one of them said, I'd really like to be down there to see that nurse when she draws that blood the first time and it comes out green and gold. That's probably what happened. I thought, and Jim used a word for me, how do you introduce a legend? And I knew that in the program, all of the accomplishments that Don had accomplished would be there. It's been in the paper. It's been in the Tech paper. It's been in a lot of places. So how could I do this and really get what Don Sevier is all about? So I came up with the idea of why not let the players and the teammates speak and tell their story of what they think of Don. That's kind of scary, isn't it? So I went on my trek of accomplishing this. First time right after this happened, I ran into 3 boys that had been on the 71 team. And I said, guys, I know that it's been 30 years ago, but could you just give me a word or two that Coach Sevier was kind of known for saying? Could you give me some help here? I'm going to introduce him. And all 3 of them kind of looked at each other, and one of them is here tonight, maybe others I hadn't seen, but they all started laughing. And they came out in unison with this word, quick, 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 quick. I've talked to probably 25 guys, and every one of them, what's the thing you remember about Coach? Quick, 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 quick. Said he wouldn't have been so bad as a freshman. He said, you know, I woke up the first week I was here, and I was hearing it in my sleep. And he said, I didn't think too much about it, but I looked over at my bedmate, who was also a freshman, and he said, has Coach Sevier in here been saying quick, quick? So he carried a legend. I wanted to say, too, that, you know, you've heard this expression, I'd give my right arm for a guy. Well, these 2 guys were, 2 of them were talking to I bet. One of them said, you know, I'd give my right arm for Coach Sevier. The other one said, yeah, and I've seen days when he'd have taken it. I wanted to relate my message to you by reading some letters, not the letters. I have too many letters to read. I can't even read parts of the letters because there's so many and the conversations I've had. But I want to just pull up a paragraph or two out each one of these real quickly and tell you what his teammates and his players have to think about Don Sevier. First one comes from a teammate who started with him. They went 4 years together. He's now a successful businessman in the Little Rock area. He makes this statement. As a player, coach, and athletic director, Don Sevier is Arkansas Tech to many of us. He is that way to thousands of people. He has represented our university with the highest level of integrity and honor and professionalism. That's what one of his teammates said. Another player who you have met already made this statement. Some of you may have seen this in the paper. I didn't mean for Mary to let that get out, but it did. I met Coach Sevier in August of 1962. He was the biggest man I had ever seen. His hands were so big he could hide a football. Over the next 4 years, I got to know him intimately. I learned that his body pales in size when compared to his heart and his love for young men and for Arkansas Tech. This next one is 3 pages long. I'm not going to read it all, but I want to lift a paragraph or two. It's sort of typical of what the others had to say. I had no business trying to play college football, but I did. I was never really large enough to play on the offensive line, but I did. I know that I wasn't ever really a very good football player, but I played. I was given a chance when most coaches probably would have laughed at me for even trying. Coach Sevier not only encouraged me, but helped me believe that I could actually play. He gave me an opportunity to either sink or swim. He kept encouraging and building me until eventually I felt almost competent of playing the game. Video sessions can be cruel for a guy that's not very gifted athlete. In my 4 years at Tech, I probably screwed up 1,000 times and was never belittled or made to feel incompetent. Coach Sevier helped me become a better player and I think a better person for the way he dealt with me. I know for a fact that he could have really ripped me during the video sessions, but he never did. He really helped me overcome some of my big shortcomings. And he goes on, he talks about the size of Coach Sevier and other things, but I wanted to read this part. Back to his size. Did you ever see him hold Jolie when she was very young? That touched me when I first saw him holding her and how he talked to her. I thought, as much as anything, that showed what was really inside this big man. Last paragraph. Coach gave me a chance when I was a long shot. He encouraged me and treated me with respect and care. He was demanding but very fair. I tried and wanted to make him proud of my play on the field. I didn't want to disappoint him. That player who was too little, too slow, started as an offensive lineman on the 1971 team that played in the national championship, where we were beat 14-12, and I might add our best running back was under the weather. On the program, it lists his weight, 189 pounds. That was small even then. But Coach Sevier instilled in him a big heart. The last one I want to read, I want to make a statement. This athlete quit, walked off the field, went to the dormitory, took his gear, and headed home. Coach Sevier pursued, found the man and his son, convinced him to come back to Arkansas Tech. Here's what he says. I had the honor of attending Tech and playing for Coach Sevier, where he was the offensive line coach. Coach Sevier is responsible for any success I had as an athlete and student. I certainly did not want to disappoint him. Coach Sevier is responsible for my staying in school, my graduation, and has been a role model for me and hundreds of others. Everyone who has ever been coached by Coach Sevier, no doubt, has a story that remains etched in their minds. Every student athlete, even ones who did not play directly for him, were affected by his presence. Coach Sevier was like a second father to me. He encouraged me when it was needed. I love my two sons very much, and I hope that a man like Coach Sevier will come into their lives. I couldn't read all the letters, but I think it's evident from this why Don Sevier is so highly regarded by his former players and peers. He was not just concerned about their athletic ability. Coach Sevier was concerned about their lives. So it's a great honor for me to present Coach Don Sevier, who will be inducted into Arkansas Tech's Hall of Distinction. We didn't plan this, but this is our uniform for the night.
I've been wondering what I was going to say for about 6 weeks now. And Jerry kind of broke me up there. I appreciate those kind words from all those ex-athletes. I probably know 2 or 3, Jerry. I'm sure glad they didn't write you a letter. Jerry, thank you for all those kind words. Thank you for getting those letters from those great young men. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Thank you, Dr. Kurtz, for giving me the opportunity to be the athletic director at Arkansas Tech. Thank you, alumni, for electing me to this probably undeserved award, but I'm going to keep it anyway. And thank you for all of the friends that are here tonight, those people from Russellville. It's an honor to be on the same podium with the other 3 men. Jim Harwood. Jim didn't tell you what all he had done for Tech, but when Coach Dempsey and all of us were coaching, Jim was one of our biggest supporters in the Fort Smith area and helped us recruit some awful fine athletes, Jim, and you're well deserved of this award tonight, and I'm proud to be on the podium with you. Joe Foley. Well, when I hired Joe to be the women's basketball coach, if I'd have known, Joe, that you was going to be half the coach you were, we probably paid you a little bit more. Jim Dickinson had just gotten back from the national tournament. And, the next day after he got back from that national tournament, he walked in my office and said, Coach, I'm going to resign. He said, I'm going to take a job with the National Guard. And I wasn't prepared for that message, so I thought to myself, well, who can we hire to be the coach? And we'd had 2 awful good coaches, Jim Yeager and Jim Dickinson. So I started to looking around everything, and a man, Joe probably doesn't even know this, but John Weider walked into my office, Joe. And I know at the the time, I was talking to Billy Burt Baker at Northside, that he was about to hire you up there. But John Weider said, do you know that Coach Foley has coached women's basketball? I said, no, John, I really didn't. He said, you'll be making a mistake if you don't hire Joe Foley. And I thought, Joe Foley coaching women's basketball? And I'd heard him on the court of the men's basketball team. And I thought, well, there's one man I had put a lot of faith in was John Weider. And if he had the belief that Joe Foley could coach women's basketball, and Dr. Kirsch believed that Joe Foley could coach basketball, or women's basketball, I thought, well, I better interview Joe and see if he really wants to coach the Arkansas Golden Sun. So Joe came in and we had a big talk about the difference between the male and the female. And Joe convinced me right then that he was really a student of the game. I'm a lot further along because I had truthfully not paid a whole lot of attention to his coaching because he and John Weider had only been there 2 years. And Joe, you really made me look good. You've done a great job. So, I mean, and everybody is proud of your program and what it stands for. Jimmy Smith, I remember when you was in diapers. And really, when you get right down to it, I really remember when your dad was much more than diapers. But he was a football player here at Tech, and a good one. He sure did hustle. And I'm glad to see you on the same podium with us, Jimmy. You're a fine young man, and good luck to you as in your profession. Next thing I'd like to do is introduce my family, who really have put up with me for a long time. One of them has been married to me for 45 years. And I don't believe any of you would probably believe this, but when we started going together back in Walden, Arkansas, we were the same height. Joanne, if you'd stand up, hold your applause, Joanne, stand up. That's my little wife. She stayed with me for 45 years, and she's always been supportive of me. In this last 10 weeks, she's taken care of me awful well because I have not been a good patient, and I've heard a lot, and she's stroked my brow a few times. And of course, the next one, just keep standing, hon. The next one would be our daughter, Jolie. Stand up, if you would. That's the apple of Joanne and I's eye. She's been a great young lady. She's a graduate of Arkansas Tech. She has a fine husband that we're really proud of. Blaine Leeds. Where are you, Blaine? Oh, there he is. He's a dentist in Clarksville. And his mother and dad, who the other side of the thing is Dan Leeds and Frida. Dan, stand up. And Frida, if you stand up, this is Blaine's mother and dad. And really, they're like, Dan's kind of like my brother now. Every time we have a holiday, we go to his house, and Frida tries to feed us to death. And the two real big ones there is old Brant, stand up. This is the oldest grandson. And Brennan, stand up there, little man. And this is the other one. And this is my family right there, and I'm proud of them. Next, I may run over just a little bit if you don't mind. But next, I've got a few friends here I've got a lot of friends here, pardon me, but I want to introduce, number one would be Don Dempsey. Coach Dempsey, stand up, please, and hold your applause till we get through with these. Really, my life in Arkansas Tech has revolved around Don Dempsey. Don may not even remember this, but I was really contemplating going to another school, possibly, I didn't really know for sure, but Don had just gotten back from the Korean War, and Arkansas Tech wanted him to be a football player here very bad, because he'd already been one for a year for the Korean War. And so they hired Don that summer to just kind of go around and check on the football players that might come to Arkansas Tech. And Don came to my house, and we had a conversation. He just really talked to me about what it was like to play college football and this type of thing. And that's when I first met Don Dempsey. And then, of course, I came to Tech and played football with Don, roomed with Don for 1 year. And then to come back to Arkansas Tech after I graduated, I was coaching at at El Dorado. And one day I looked up on the basketball court, and there stood Don Dempsey on the other end. I didn't know, I thought he was probably out wanting some of our football players, but he told me he wanted to talk to me when the practice was over, and he invited me. He and Coach Salmon had talked about me, and maybe coming back to Arkansas Tech and being a coach. Well, when I told Joanne, she jumped about as high as I was when I told her we might go back. But then when Don became the head football coach, he invited me also to be his assistant. And I've been great friends with Don Dempsey. And Don, I thank you very much for all that you did. Thank you. The next one would be a little old boy from Scott County. When I got to know Billie Jean Davis, he came out of the mountains around Cawthon, and we were all playing football for Walden High School. And the next thing they said, there's an old boy named Billie Jean Davis. And Billie Jean had never seen a football game or a football before. And he came to Walden, and we became great friends. They even went to Colorado when we was in high school and worked in the sawmills up there and killed porcupines and I don't know what all. But Billie Jean Davis is probably the biggest influence of me coming to Arkansas Tech as being an athlete. Because Bill was already over here. He was 2 years ahead of me in school, and he was very happy with Arkansas Tech. So I thought, well, if Billie Jean is happy, I can be happy there too. And Bill, you were a big influence, you and Ann as well. My other good friends I've had there is Chuck Horn and Donna. I tell you what, Chuck has been a real strong backbone advocate for me for these last 10, 12 weeks. Of course, Chuck also played as a wonder boy with me back in the 50s, and Donna was a student. But they have really been good friends and helped me get over this heart surgery. And Chuck, you and Donna, I thank you very much for it. There's another person here that I want you to know that also was an influence on me very much, and that's Coach Wilson Kell. Coach Kell, stand up if you would. Where are you? There he is all the way in the back. Coach Wilson Kell was my football coach in high school. I only have two coaches that's still alive, and one of them, Coach Tom Sawyer, who was my first coach, who's in nursing home. He's Mary Ann Salmon's father. And Coach Kell was there for my last year in Walden. And Coach Kell, I really appreciate you coming over here tonight, and thank you for all you did for me at Walden High School. Thank you, sir. And another fellow I would talk a little bit about, old Coach Harold Stillman. Most of you remember Harold, but Harold was a coach at El Dorado when I went there as a coach. He and I hit it off real well as our wives hit it off real well, Carolyn. And Joanne and Carolyn ran a nursery, and Harold and I tried to run the football team and the basketball team. Thank you for coming, Harold, you and Carolyn. Thank you very much. I could talk for hours about my days at Arkansas Tech as a player, as a coach, as an athletic director, but I'd probably do nothing more than bore you. But I will just say this, when I was a student athlete at Arkansas Tech, it was the heyday, really, I think, of Arkansas Tech. There was only about 800 of us here. We always went to the Textionary at night. We all ate. The males ate Tex steaks, and some of you old will know what that is, and we had to cap it off with a Tex steak. And then we would go to the Textionary, and that's the old building. Used to be the women's gym, but also the Textionary was there. And we'd figure out what we was going to do that night or whatever. But if we played basketball, all 800 of them were lined up at the old Stroop building wanting to get in. And all the town people from Russell was lined up wanting to get in. And when we came out of Wilson Hall, because our dressing room was in Wilson Hall, we were met by whatever the Stroop building holds, I guess 2,500 or something, and Witherspoon and his band. And if you couldn't play basketball after all of that, you wasn't an athlete. And I'll guarantee you, everybody sat right down on the court. And I can still remember hearing that Tech fight song and playing on the old Stroop building. The same thing was in football. When you went out on the football field, if Gene Witherspoon was a little tired or whatever over in the Witherspoon Hall, you could gather up what band members he had still around there, and they'd come marching through the campus. And it didn't have to be a called pep rally. It might just be everybody just turned out and had a pep rally. And of course, if you had a pep rally with J.W. Hull and John Tucker, you better all be there. And Coach remembers all of that. In our basketball, well, we played from Birmingham, Alabama to Kansas City, Missouri, and all in between. Got to go to 4 NAIA, got to go twice to the national playoff championship with top 4. All of that is fond memories. But the fondest memory, I'd have to say, is when I coached here at Arkansas Tech. I can look out here and see the young men that Coach Dempsey and Coach Toothaker, Coach Montgomery and I had. If that can't make you kind of tears coming to your eyes, because they've all done well. They were great athletes. And to put up with us 4 as they did every day, and as hard as we worked them, Coach, because that's the way we won. They had to outwork folks. Really, when I played under Coach Heineman, that's kind of the way he did it. So, boys, if I was too tough on you, I was kind of taught by a fella that liked to run. But now I love every one of them. They've called me, wrote me. I see them on the street, or I meet them around the country. I'm proud of every one of them. If I had my life to live over as a coach, I would do it in no other place than Arkansas Tech, and no other young men than what we had here while I was on the coaching staff. If you think they wouldn't get in your hair when they put on the helmet, you just get on the other side of the line of scrimmage. As athletic director, I had 19 years of an awful lot of fun. And if I had my life to live over in all phases of my life, if I could write a book, I'd still write exactly what I've done. And to the people of Russellville, you have been so supportive of Arkansas Tech, so supportive of our athletic program, and all of our friends. We thank you. I've never been able to really have you in a body to say thank you for the support that you have always given Arkansas Tech, and really we would not have been at the height that we have done in athletics if it hadn't been for the Russellville people. They have always come through when we needed them. And to all of you, truly, my friends, I have been blessed. I've been blessed for 67 years. I hope my old heart keeps it going for a few more, but thank you very much. I appreciate it very much for the award. Thank you for coming.
I've known Jim Smith all his life. I've known his family all my life. But honestly, I didn't really know him until he came to Arkansas Tech and enrolled in our accounting program. You know, some of those classes are so challenging that a teacher learns a whole lot more about a student than just his academic capacity. You learn pretty quickly about a student's commitment and character. And Jim excelled at every one of these points, and he's continued to excel at every succeeding level of both his professional education and experience. Jim was born in Russellville. He's a graduate of Russellville High School, enrolled in Tech with a President's Leadership Program scholarship, and he was a good enough athlete to get a baseball scholarship where he was a member of an AIC championship baseball team. While at Tech, Jim was a member of Lambda Chi Alpha Social Fraternity, Student Activities Board, Treasurer of Blue Key, President of the Accounting Club. During his junior and senior years, he was Treasurer of the Student Government Association and worked at the local accounting firm of Dale Brown and Company. He was recognized as a member of Who's Who in American Colleges and Universities, and he was a recipient of the Wall Street Journal Award, which is the premier award for a student from the School of Business. In 1991, Jim graduated with honors here at Tech as an accounting major. He attended the University of Arkansas School of Law, where he was a member of the Arkansas Law Review, treasurer of Phi Delta Phi, and graduated again with honors in 1994. Now, this was quite a year in 1994. In that same year, he completed the Certified Public Accountant exam. He completed the Arkansas Bar exam. He was admitted to the graduate program at New York University. And incidentally, just before leaving for New York, he and Courtney Meisner were married some year. He received his Master of Law and Taxation degree from NYU in 1995 and returned to Arkansas to practice tax and corporate law in Little Rock with Friday, Eldridge & Clark, which is arguably the premier law firm in the state. Jim became a partner with the firm last year. In August, he was entrusted with the opening of their first office in Fayetteville, which is also their first office outside of Little Rock. You'd think that was enough for that year, but he and Courtney topped that off with the birth of their first child, son, Griffin. Jim has more professional and community membership and leadership positions than I can begin to list in the time they want me to take here. In addition, he has several published articles and continues to teach several professional continuing education courses. Jim's never forgotten, though, where he came from. Out of his first paycheck from the law firm came a donation to Arkansas Tech. And he's continued that commitment of both money and time as he serves as president of the Arkansas Tech Alumni Association and has been a leader in support of the establishment of the first endowed academic chair here at the university. And Jim hadn't reached his 33rd birthday yet. His best years are still in front of him. So I'd like to take just a little time and talk not about what he's done, but who he is, according to those that know him best. His employer, while he was still at Tech, talks about Jim's dedication to his work, that nothing but school commitments ever interfered with the job. Comments on his ability to communicate, and then talked about his mentoring of the employees' sons at a time when the employer was going through a divorce. And I quote here, "He was like a big brother to my sons and was always there for them and to encourage them that life continues." And he goes on to say, Jim is the prime example that parents want their children to follow in life's path. one of the senior partners with Friday, Eldridge and Clark, described Jim to me as ambitious, aggressive, industrious, first to get to the office, last to leave, a client pleaser, great at developing relationships, a deal maker who is great at resolving conflicts, a lawyer who has handled a number of significant deals for the firm. Yet his mother talks about his great sense of humor, that he's a practical joker, convinced his young nephews that his grandmother's house had ghosts. But then, through painful example, taught them how to walk on their hands and roll down hills. He took up rollerblading just in the last few years. He loves music. A great fan of Tina Turner, he travels all over the country for her concerts. His family is convinced that his legal clients would never believe the way he clowns it up with the family. His grandmother describes a curious, busy little boy who was into everything, always at top speed. She describes the special relationship Jim had with his grandfather, whom he lost when Jim was only 9 years old. And Jim had to grow up fast because he became the man in the household when he was just a freshman in college. And looking after his mother's been a major priority for him ever since. And Courtney, his wife, shares the way the birth of Griffin has changed him as he reaches out for quality time with his firstborn. She also shares that Jim's a great cook, loves it and does it well. Now, as for my own view of Jim, I found a copy of a letter I wrote back in 1994 to NYU in support of his application for admission there. And I think I got it right then, and I know it still applies today. So if I may quote from that letter, I know Jim Smith to be a bright, disciplined, and gregarious young man. His successes have come at least as much from discipline and determination as from academic brilliance. He's well-liked and respected by all who know him. From our mutual classroom experiences, I know Jim Smith to have strong analytical skills. From our long association, I know him to possess the self-confidence and skills to orally present himself well. From his experience with the Arkansas Law Review, I infer his ability to write with clarity and precision. His academic record, both as an undergraduate and the University of Arkansas School of Law, would seem to speak to his overall academic ability. And then I close my letter by saying, for the future economic progress of our state and our region, we need this type of young man with these added skills. I'm honored to present to you the recipient of the first Outstanding Young Alumnus Award, James W. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Lemley, for your kind remarks. Sounds like the older I get, the better I was. That's the way I like it. As all of you know, Mr. Lemley's been a true friend and mentor of mine for a long time, and his introduction to me tonight means more than he'll ever know. I especially want to thank you, Miss Lemley, for coming tonight. You've always been a very important part of my family. Like everybody else has said here tonight, it is truly, truly good to be home tonight. This is a very, very special honor for my family and me, and it's especially good to be honored this evening with Mr. Harwood, Coach Foley. You know, it's evident from a relationship that the relationship that Mr. Lemley and I have is not that unusual at Tech. It's been spoken about a little bit earlier tonight. Center fielder of my Little League baseball team back in 1980 is now the head coach of the Northside Girls in Fort Smith. Winner of the last 3 state championships and nationally ranked very highly year in, year out. I was reading an article about him in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette in January, which he says that so much of what he's become as a coach and what he's developed into is an attribute that he learned from Coach Foley while he was his graduate assistant while he was in college. Also want to point out Ricky, congratulations, just named the Arkansas Democrat Gazette Coach of the Year, girls high school basketball. Why don't you stand up? Through my dad, I've known Coach Sevier practically my entire life. He obviously knows me a little longer than I know him. But I also served as treasurer of the Student Government Association at Tech under Jolie's presidency my junior year and Blaine's my senior year. It is really good to see you all tonight. Congratulations. Many family and friends have joined me here tonight. Several of you have made a dramatic impact in my life without even knowing that you've said something or you've done something that has made an impact on me. I know things are getting late in the evening, and I certainly don't want to take the time to go through all of these, but I know that I can name 2 or 3 people at each table that have made an influence on my life and have been good friends to me throughout my life, and I just want to thank you all. My sister Jamie is here tonight. She's sitting at the front table with me. Jamie and I have both come a very long way since she put me in the dryer and turned it back on. I couldn't ask for a better sister, and I truly appreciate you coming tonight. Thanks. As Mr. Lemley alluded to a little bit in our introduction, I have had the very good fortune of having a strong and kind grandmother who's always been there to provide the much-needed support not only to me but to my family. As many of you know, my grandfather passed away over 20 years ago at the ripe old age of 62. Although I was only in the 4th grade at the time, I can really say with all sincerity that a lot of the decisions I make in my life, I think about what I would expect he would do in a similar situation. You did a very good job of filling the void that exists when a grandfather is no longer with you. And I want to thank you for all you've done and for coming tonight. My aunt, uncle, and cousin, Paula, Jim, and Jody Parker are here tonight, as well as my Aunt Mary Jess Tibbles. Their attendance is not unusual in the least, and that they've always been there for me. Hope I've been there for them, but I can certainly say they've been there for me. I was talking to Jim a little while ago before we sat down and ate. He was a member of the 1971 National Championship runner-up team that Coach Sevier talked about, in which we lost 14-12. And he told me that Benny Shepard, who's the running back, made it in tonight, and I just know that one of these days he's going to tell me the story and that you're not going to get ill, that you're going to play in the game, and that we're going to win that thing. That's what I'm going to tell my son. Also want to say, acknowledge that my mother and father-in-law, Don and Janice Meisner, are with us tonight, although they prefer to be known as Lovey and Poppy, the grandfather and grandmother of mine and Courtney's 9-month-old son, Griffin. And sometimes it seems like only yesterday that I was coming to the house to pick up Courtney for a date, sitting at the table and talking to y'all while she got ready. Time really flies. Also want to thank Grace and Hell for coming tonight. I've had a true sister, and more than being a friend for over 20 years, Grayson has really been practically a brother. And it's really a good thing that neither Grayson nor I have any political ambitions, because in this day and age, it'd be difficult for either of us to run for office. Also got to express my gratitude, as Mr. Lemley could tell you about, to Andy Adams. Andy is the one that set the curve on all the tests for the 2 years that we were in accounting together, and he didn't have to study at all. But his form of studying was tutoring me so I could just eke by. So I saw Andy a little while earlier tonight. I want to thank you for coming. You've probably noticed a few extra lawyers here tonight. Some of my friends from the firm have driven down here from Little Rock, and I really appreciate that. That's just another good example of the good fortune that I've benefited from all my life. Seems like I've always been in the right place at the right time. These are all outstanding lawyers, but more importantly, they're very good friends. They're very good people. Thanks for all of y'all for coming tonight. Actually, I think they're here to see if this really was true, or if this was just some cruel joke that Gwen was sending around on the email. They'll be among the first to tell you that I look better on paper than I do in person. I especially want to acknowledge Byron and Carol Eisman, nationally respected tax lawyer, repeatedly acknowledged as the best in Arkansas. It's been a real honor working with Byron at the firm. His status as an excellent lawyer, as many of you who personally know him, placed second only to his stature as a truly fine and genuine individual who takes a real interest in the community and those people around him. I perhaps learned more of that from him than the practice of law, as I think many others at the firm would say. Byron and Mr. Lemley have been good friends for a very long time. Carol's father taught him accounting long time back. What Mr. Lemley didn't tell you is that he knows I didn't have evidently have the credentials to get in to a clerkship at Friday, Eldridge and Clark when I was in law school. Some of the lawyers would tell you that certainly should have continued to be the case, but in any event, didn't have really what it took to clerk at the firm. And then Mr. Lemley made a call to Byron after I was accepted to NYU, and I was able to go down there and meet Byron and learn about the firm. They were able to learn a little bit about me, and then I went off to NYU, and in the meantime, one of the tax lawyers left the firm to become a prosecutor, and that opened up a position at the firm, and so I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time to get in the door and practice law at the firm. Despite all of this, I do think that Byron and Mr. Lemley have remained to be good friends, but I haven't asked that question. That wasn't the first time that Mr. Lemley got me a job. As he alluded to, when I was a junior in college, he told me that Dale Brown had a position available at his accounting department over at his accounting firm, and went and visited with him. I was working at First National Bank at the time with Charlie Blanchard, Burt Mullen, Bentley Cox, Craig Fleming, all those guys, and was really enjoying it, but knew that I wanted to at least see what the practice of accounting was. Dale hired me for the next 2 years. I practiced in his firm, finishing up school before going to law school. Fortunate again, accounting was the easy part of it. Despite being a true boss, he was a true friend. Connie and Dale are sitting at our table tonight, and the inspiration, dedication that he's given me through the last 15 years have really gotten me a long way. I want to thank you for all you've done. Without a doubt, my mother and wife have been the foundation of who I have been and who I am becoming. I cannot remember a single moment that my mother has not been a guiding light and a true friend. When I was young, Mom and I would watch TV on weekend nights, eating popcorn and drinking Kool-Aid, while Jamie'd be at the movies or on a date. As Courtney would tell you, I still prefer to be home on the weekend evenings having popcorn and Kool-Aid. But a wonderful relationship was created out of the time my mother and I spent together, and I still enjoy the fruits of it today. I have learned strength, courage, and devotion among the many things from my mother. The challenges I have seen her face, lupus, divorce, going to work after 20 years of being a homemaker and raising Jamie and I, and a myriad of other things, have given me an inner strength and discipline necessary to survive in a sometimes difficult world. I'm 32 years old. When she was my age, she had a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and since my dad was gone most of the time, she really had a lot to handle. I'm here today because she was there. On January 23rd, 1987, Grayson and his girlfriend at the time, Erin Richardson, convinced Courtney to go out on a double date with me. Courtney wasn't sure about going out with me. She had just broken up with a guy, and she had to go to Little Rock to pick up a South African exchange student. Don was in Rotary, and this gal was going to stay with them for a while. But in any event, Grayson, being the brother that he is, convinced Courtney to go out with me on January 23rd, 87. We went to Main Street Cafe, and we've been together ever since, 14 years. That's made life much more simple, at least for me. I've always said, as many of you have heard me say, that I've overmarried and that I got the better end of the deal. Courtney's had to put up with long hours of studying, long hours and weekends at the office, my midlife crisis that I incurred when I was 30 years old, the diagnosis of and extended treatments in Michigan for her Wilson's disease. She turns 30 in 2 days. There's no crisis in sight. I've read that one of the 5 foundations to being successful is a supportive spouse. Successful is a relative term, but I have certainly benefited from an extremely supportive wife who is a much stronger person than I will ever be. Watching the relationship created between you and our 9-month-old son, Griffin, is one of the best things I've ever witnessed. Thanks. I'm so proud of you. The current dean of the School of Business, Tom Tyler, once said that I must bleed green and gold, evidently like Coach Sevier, Coach Foley, and Mr. Harwood. That impression is a direct reflection of the open door policy, support, and friendship that he, Mr. Lemley, Joe Moore, Gene Cole, and the countless other faculty provided to me while at Tech. Whether it was studying business finance from Dr. Tyler, investments from Dr. Moore, quantitative business analysis, whatever that means, from Bobbi Mullen, discussing President Nixon in Rexanna Aller's class, or just various other activities, American government with Ken Rogers. It never felt like a school or a university, it felt like a home. And that's why it's so easy for so many of us to get back involved. You know, it's such a bargain when you look back, and in 1991, my last semester at Tech cost $605, and I paid $805 per credit hour at NYU. I received every bit as good an education as I did at NYU here, and having been there, have the true luxury of knowing the benefits and educational background that you can get at Tech. Gerald Johnston, who's sitting in the back tonight, the retired chief financial officer of Tyson Foods, said it best at a very important time in my life. I was a junior in college, was at the accounting club banquet that he was speaking at. Tyson had just completed the hostile takeover of Holly Farms, so he was speaking about that and about his career and his dedication to Tech. And he said what I remember verbatim, so I'll quote it. When you come from Tech, you don't have to play second fiddle to anyone. And I have personally found that to be so true. Tech is vibrant, full of life and energy. It's growing at a rapid clip, and it's hard to recognize from the university I attended just 10 years ago. Under the leadership of Dr. Brown, the physical infrastructure of Tech is suited well for the start of the 21st century. Our football team's winning. We've got one of the best women's basketball teams in the nation at any level. The admission numbers, 5,172 students entered in the fall of 2000, and the academic qualifications of the students entering Tech are at an all-time high. And from a technological standpoint, Tech's hard to beat. Its activities over the last few years have kind of go along the same saying that I try to use in my life. I read a long, long time ago, but that I continue to tell myself a couple of times each week. It goes like this. In Africa, every morning when the sun comes up, a gazelle awakens and knows that it must be running or it's going to be eaten. Every morning when the sun comes up in Africa, a lion wakes up and knows it's got to be running or it's going to starve. The bottom line is it really doesn't matter if you're the gazelle or the lion. When the sun comes up, you better be running. A lot of success involves the situations a person gets himself into and the people he meets. I've got a great family, I've got great friends. I've been extremely lucky and hope that my luck continues. Thank you again for this very special honor. It's a night that my family and I will never forget.
This was fun. It's really nice to come to an event like this and get to share in the lives of people that you're around or you know of every day. And I just want to thank all the presenters for the wonderful job you did, and especially the recipients for the work you've done for Tech and the lives you've given to Tech. Just relax, because I got to tell one severe story. There's too
You're
many.
on the board, you can say whatever you want to.
There's too many guys back here that lived under him for me not to tell one little quick story, and I could tell a bunch. I could. He said he could talk all night. I could talk all night about Coach Sevier. Could talk all night about his wife too. Things like snakes in her apartment and a lot of different things. But anyway, this one story. This won't take long. Then we'll turn it over to Dr. Brown. When I was a freshman here, Coach Sevier was the first year to coach here for him. And he had it in his head that upperclassmen could do no wrong and freshmen did everything wrong. And we were so scared that we didn't do anything wrong. I mean, we just wouldn't even open our mouth at the wrong time. And there were guys here like Sleepy Curtis and Goose Shepherd and people like that were upperclassmen, the leaders of the team. And they would do some terrible things. Over in Hughes Hall, which was built by the WPA, it's a concrete structure veneered with rock, and it's loud in there. And at night, we had to be at bed at a certain time, and lights were supposed to be out, and Coach Sevier was in charge of making sure that happened. And at night, these upper-class leaders would sneak out of the room, and there were these huge trash cans. And they were metal trash cans, and they'd take these cans, and they'd throw them down the stairs down to the laundry room, down where the ROTC was. And it was a long way down there, and it was terribly loud. And it would wake you up if you were asleep. Well, one night, right before an important ball game, these guys did it again, and you could hear Coach Sevier's door open and crash against the wall. I mean, he'd throw that door open, and his step would be about 30 seconds. And you'd take it. Well, sure enough, I'm living down there by these leaders, and he comes to my door. Well, as soon as I heard his door slam open, I shut my light out, and I crawled in bed, and I put my cover up to about here, and he comes to my door. And I wouldn't do anything like that today, much less back then. He comes to my door, and he opens the door, and he throws the light on, and I kind of raise up, kind of act like I'm asleep, you know, and he said, "Philip," I said, "what was that noise? Who did that noise? What was that noise?" And I said, "Coach, I didn't hear any noise. What are you talking about?" He said, "You didn't hear any noise?" And I said, "No, sir, I didn't hear anything." I heard him going down the hall, and he's, pardon my speech here, but he said, "That damn Phillips must be dead." Coach, we love you. Dr. Brown, close us out. It's been a wonderful night. Thank you.
Hold on here, Mr. Phillips, before you get away. Our board member and graduate and member of the Hall of Distinction, Phil Phillips, has done an outstanding job this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, don't you think he's been magnificent? Thank you, Mr. Phillips, for your token of our appreciation. There's someone else who deserves a special word of thanks this evening, and that is the Director of Alumni Work here at Arkansas Tech University, Mary Lackey. Mary, stand so that we can recognize you. We also appreciate the good work of our student ambassadors. Ambassadors, thank you for being present. These are outstanding young people at Arkansas Tech, and I hope that my days are long enough that I will be around when they too are on this podium, because I think they're destined for that. Ambassadors, thank you. We offer a special thanks to Keith Klutz for helping us this evening. Normally, this is the job of the president of the Alumni Association, and we had to have the president-elect because the president was an inductee. We appreciate our presenters. Jerry Burns, thank you. Mr. Gene Harwood, thank you. Mr. Bill Limley, thank you. To our honorees, we extend our heartiest congratulations. Hall of Distinction, Coach Sevier. Hall of Distinction, Mr. Jim Harwood. Distinguished Service Award, Coach Joe Foley. The first Young Alumnus Award to Jim Smith. Let's give them all a round of applause yet once again. Now, I'm like Phil Phillips. I've had a wonderful time this evening, and the reason I have is because as I sit on this stage and look about this room, I see a veritable who's who of Arkansas Tech University. Universities are known by the graduates they produce and the character of those people and the lives they live. When I look around this room, I'm heartened about the past of Arkansas Tech and its glories, about the present reality, and about the glorious future that we know that awaits us. When we honor people like Jim Harwood, or Don Sevier, or Joe Foley, or Jim Smith, truly we have a reverse situation, a through-the-looking-glass kind of scenario, because we know that it is really ourselves that are being honored. It's those of us that have the privilege for a while to work at the university. We understand through their distinguished lives and careers what a privilege we have and what a trust is ours to keep. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to dismiss in just a moment. And when we do, we're going to invite you to move across the street, is that right, Mary? The Doc Bryan Student Center. If you're wondering why you hadn't had a cup of coffee and some dessert yet, it's because you have to go across the street to get it. Now, there's a little construction around here. We're known for our construction these days. There's just a bit of it. So everyone, please take care, watch your step. We look forward to seeing you there. To our recipients, thank you. To all of you who are present this evening, thank you so much for the prayers you give for Arkansas Tech, for being present here and on many other occasions, for the way you remember us by saying a kind word, and for the gifts that you have given. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good evening.